What's up, everyone?
Um,
Can you guys hear me? What's up, Michael?
Sure can. Hi, everybody.
Sweet. Hello, hello.
The other call's just ending, so a lot of people going to log on now.
Yeah, I figured.
What other call were
Right.
you on?
The other call was the deal room call, I believe. Right, Michael?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this one's the one where you do that pick 4 or 5 properties to underwrite or whoever submits.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the deal room's all like multifamily, like strictly multifamily stuff. And so like on their Tuesday morning, Tuesday 11 Eastern, they do like Michael's saying, they take a handful of properties and they like deep dive, underwrite them. A lot of good value provided by that group. It was good seeing you in person, by the way, Michael.
Indeed. Same to you, Tim. Nice meeting you in person. It was a great night.
Yeah,
Well worth
yeah.
the trip.
Love it. All
Yeah.
right. So I've been looking on mobile home park store almost exclusively, and then I was like, let's see, let's check out Crexy. And then I realized that not everyone posts mobile home parks on mobile home park store. Like some of them just list them traditionally, and so I look at Crexy. And I saw a lot of deals that I wasn't seeing otherwise. So I'm like, okay, I need to not get rid of, stop looking on mobile home park store as much as just like, okay, I need to be mindful of Crexy. So before we begin, anyone got any property they want called about, they want to talk about, anything interesting going on?
Yes. I was telling you in Atlanta, I found the owner of this. Turns out it's only 81 units, so it's 81 pads. It's in a phenomenal location. It's maybe 8 minutes from 5 different beaches, and it's a beautiful piece of flat land that just had a whole new sewer system installed by the owner. And turns out I was really excited about it. Found the owner, went and stalked him down at his office, picked some of the landscape people that were doing maintenance and stopped them while they were mowing their own lawns and said, hey, can you tell me about this park? And I finally found the lady that wanted to spew a lot of conversation. And so she spent 25 minutes just telling me everything that's going on with the park. And turns out that it's under crazy litigation. Company called Crown Community. Yeah. Crown Community out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. Does anybody know them? Was my first question for this call.
Are they really there, or they just have
they're really there. I looked them up. They look big time. Looks like
I
affordable.
feel like I know the name.
Like they build communities.
Property Crown Communities. Let's see.
You know, it's funny that I think the LinkedIn link didn't look so big. Like they had 3 employees, but then 2 to 10 employees. It's kind of like then, but if you go back and you go to the next one down, where it's their actual website, but not on LinkedIn, Tim.
How do you view website? What is crowncommunities.com, maybe?
Yep. And it's them.
Oh, interesting. So they do a little bit of everything, huh?
Yeah. So interesting thing about them, the owner Phil Weinstein Phil Austin, excuse me, decides that he's going to sell the park. He sells it to these guys, to this corporation, for 3.9 million.
Mhm.
After he did it, the state of Massachusetts evidently has a right of first refusal for anything that is a corporate big thing, or at least in mobile home parks. And there's now
What?
yeah, so there's now a community. There's now a mobile home park association, like, that goes in and kind of acts like a kind of acts like the Teamsters, right? They get everybody together in the mobile
Yeah.
home park and say, there's 81 units. We need 41 signatures. We're going to come to the table with some financing for you. And we're going to help you beat this guy, because don't you want to own your own park? And don't you want the land under your mobile home park? So I was astonished by this conversation, and comes to turn out that they went head to head with Crown Communities and put in a like and similar offer. Their offer had some financing in it. Crown's was cash, and the judge took a year and a half and just came back like a year ago and said Crown wins. It was a cash offer. You didn't have the prerequisite above 50% of signatures that you needed. You did not have 41 signatures of the 81 signatures needed.
Mhm.
Therefore,
Mhm.
your offer was not like and similar. Crown's is better. You lose. Crown wins. Well,
Hmm.
this community association, I think, came over. It's in Cape Cod Times. You can read the entire thing, by the way. This whole community came in and helped the Pocasset Mobile Home Park Association, which is the tenants, helped the tenants fight it. It's now back in court. So they're still
Mhm.
fighting it 2 years later to say we did have the 41 signatures, and the judge didn't count people that didn't live on premise. Said, sorry, your vote doesn't count because you just owned your mobile home, but you didn't live there.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so knocked off like 6 signatures off of their 41. Therefore, their bid was construed as not meeting the parameters of the deal. There's my story. Question:
That's
did we
crazy.
know these guys? And second question: how do we go in and say, hey, we'll help? You know, would it make sense in any way to go in and help one side or the other, or come in as a third party and put our nose in anything? Or that's just messy. Leave it alone. Yeah.
You leave it alone, I think.
All right.
Like it's, yeah. I
It's a good
I don't like
story.
that many. Mm-hmm. There was a so I read an article recently, and there was a park in Colorado where all the tenants bought the land, and they are regretting it because so there was a wastewater treatment plant on the community, or in the community, and they knew it needed to be fixed up, and they were projecting like $1 million, and instead it's like $3 million. And so what it looks like instead of their, their lot rent being like a good number, it's like it had to go up in order to pay for this. So it's kind of like a uh you know um the community needs whatever, like this big spend thing, and so like they're doing, having having to raise their rates, and people are like, oh, like I thought this was going to be better than it is, sort of thing. Like so, side note, like I live in a townhome that Jen owns, and there's a HOA, right? And when I first moved in, there was a HOA meeting, and I was like, yeah, let's go. And we went, and there's a couple people, and they're like, the HOA, like they suck, they're the worst. Like they're not telling us, everything. They're keeping things from us. And then like, finally, like one of the there's like 4 or 5 board members, one of them like resigned, or like was, moving or something. And so one of these like small group of people who was like screw these guys, like we're gonna do change and all that stuff, they got voted in, and they resigned within a week. And I was like,
Unbelievable.
why would you do that? Like you're the one who's complaining. You guys are complaining about all this stuff not happening, but like when you finally get in, you're like, oh, I this wasn't what I thought it was, or God knows their excuse. And it's just like, you think it's some way, you think there's like, oh, if I own this, then it'll be so much better. And like, I won't have to answer to anyone, sort of thing. But it's a different mindset. So like it's almost like once these HOA people got like behind the veil and got to see like, oh, it's not nefarious, it's just the insurance cost is really high right now.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's
not
like,
only is it a good story, but it's also very much corroborated. Uh, Interestingly enough, these guys, Crown Community, sent out a bunch of letters saying, "You don't know what it means to be an owner," just like your story just said. And they
yeah,
sent it
yeah,
to
dude.
they sent it to all the mobile home park owners, and they said, "We will treat you well. We're not going to sell the land out from under you," which is what the mobile home park was mostly afraid of. And that's what the association that came in to help them kept pitching. Don't let Crown own your land. Don't let Crown own your land. And in the end game, the Mobile Home Park Association, the tenants, sued Crown for being threatening. And Crown
Yeah,
said, all we did was send out a bunch of letters saying, this is not as good as you think it is. You should think about this should you need new wastewater systems in the park. Exactly what your story was. No, it doesn't end the same way. The judge said, oh, stop being silly. Crown was just being honest. And, and telling you, hey, they're not threatening you. They're telling you it's a real pain in the ass to own a mobile home park, and we're going to do the right things to make sure you have a happy time here. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's it.
And it's like the grass is greener sort of thing. Like, oh, if I owned it, it'll be so much better. And it's like,
Yep.
that's, maybe, but like it's not always appropriate, and not everyone wants to be.
Yeah.
Um, so
I just thought
yeah,
I'd throw that to you anyway. I'll send you the article just for fun.
yeah, dude, sounds good. Um, anyone else looking at any deals? Anyone want to talk about any deals or anything before I go through my journey into the Midwest? Is Kansas and Missouri and Oklahoma, Arkansas, that's the Midwest, right? Maybe Arkansas is the South. I don't know. Um,
I think
okay,
that's the
okay.
South, but
I
it's all
call
right.
that.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, so right now, stuff in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, I've seen. Yesterday I was looking at Mississippi and Louisiana, and I'm just like, yeah, there wasn't anything there that like I haven't sent out an LOI in probably like a week, I feel. Because there's nothing worth, like there's no assets that I want to own. Um, that I've seen, at least.
And Tim, remind me what you're looking for, like 100 and up, or what are you looking for?
No, like more like 40 and up, 40, 50 and up. So, um, but like, I think the farther I get, the higher that number gets. So like if I was gonna look in Missouri, it'd probably be 50 and up. Um, and like not a whole ton of rhyme or reason other than I know it's easier when things are bigger. Um, so like that, I'd consider probably stuff like that. Oh, look at, so yeah, I mean, really, a lot of this is just me browsing and seeing what's available. Um, and hating Crexy for being a clunky website, whatever, whatever.
Tim, what do you think about Opportunity Zone parks?
I'd be down. I don't know enough about it though. Like, I've heard things about, like tax advantages and stuff like that. But like, it'd be like, okay, like, I'd have to deep dive on exactly what that means and like the benefits to it.
Yeah. Okay.
For the newbies, what exactly does that mean to Opportunity Zone?
who here knows about opportunity zones? Because I know the name mostly. I don't know exactly what it means other than possible tax benefits. John, what do you know?
Very high level. They're usually areas that um, are usually less affluent and really needing support. And so the government will help incentivize new owners. I don't know if it's rebates, some sort of cash incentive to invest in that land just because it is in usually not the best area. But I don't know much more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. There's a big, and mostly in less affluent areas, but one thing they're doing is a buddy of mine just got called by the town saying if you're within 3 miles of a brand new T station that's being built in Boston in the Billerica area, they're changing it to an opportunity zone because they want crazy amounts of investment in housing within a 2 mile range of that T stop to make it worth it and build infrastructure. So they're changing an affluent area into an opportunity zone, so they can build all around it and put housing around it. Thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I know in Des Moines, I was looking at different asset class, but in Des Moines, they're really pumping in a ton of money into different opportunity zones. So you have investors that are willing to take that risk just because of it's either tax advantages or other sort of financial incentives.
There's some of these that I've looked at and talked to the broker about before, and I will go through. I'll tell you guys why they don't work, besides being overpriced. Because who cares about overpriced? I can still make an offer for someone that's I think overpriced, but these ones don't work because the towns were too small. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see what we got. 32 currently occupied mobile homes, and like, it's too small for me. Is sure, maybe you can add more here. I don't know, but not my thing.
Tim, may we
Yeah.
ask Matthias the next time we have the call with him about how he goes into research using the census?
How he goes into research of like cities?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, he looks up population. He looks up. Well, I look up, and I think we're similar. He'll look up like city data, city-data.com, bestplaces.net, stuff like that for like the metrics of people moving in and out of the city. So I think this is Chris. Chris is a good guy. I met him. Well, I've been talking to him for a while, but finally, I think met him in person in Vegas at the MHI conference. The reason that this one doesn't work, so it was like a city of like 5,000 or something, and there's all this vacancy. So if I remember right, if this like this there are 3 parks total, but you see, I mean, it's been on the market for 250 days, and it's like the person, they bought this park, they put all these really brand new like nice homes in there, and it's just it's so highly vacant because I mean the town's so tiny. It's hard to do stuff in tiny towns if they're not already tenant on homes. So like Matt and I decided if the town is less than $50,000 or $50,000, less than 50,000 people, we weren't going to try to infill. So it was like an automatic no. So the more we do this, the more automatic no's we were coming up with. which is nice because it's like, you know, the numbers could be what they want, but the reality is that making that business plan work, it's unlikely. So, you know, just like I think I had him underwrite these as if we weren't going to infill anything else. Um, and like the delta between what they want and what we could offer because of that was way off. So, you know, um, I think I might have given Chris a verbal on this, but really I think we're just like, no, you know, it's too difficult. Like it, it's you can't change the location, you can't change the population. So that was that one. Here's another, I think, yeah, okay, this was like Chris on the NAI website. There was like these three were all together, and they're all in like tiny towns with a lot of like they're the A class parks in a C class town. So it's like, you know, the town's too small for it to work. And I mean, you can see it, it's reflected on the days on market. So look at this commercial lot. And yeah, I don't want a commercial lot that doesn't, no, amazing investment opportunity that's been on the market for over a year. So not my thing, not my thing. It's nice to have like automatic no's.
Tim, regarding days on market, what's typical for like a good park to sell? Is it a month? And I think the second question is, what's the point where you say, something seems wrong. This seems like it's been on too long.
So, I mean, a good park, you know, never goes to market. Someone brings it to a broker, the broker brings it to one of their pocket buyers, and it's transacted off market. I mean, 60 days, 30 to 60 days, more like 60 plus. I'm like, okay, like let's see the opportunity, you know, what everyone else is shying away from. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's always like when I see, it's like one part of the puzzle, you know, like what am I not seeing, and like what can we do about this, you know? If it's been on the market for a while, that means either it's the price is too high or there's something going up with it. So I like this, but I'm kind of shying away from RV parks to like stay, you know, very mobile home parks. Not saying I won't work on something like this with someone, but I don't want my focus to be on that. Here's the same thing, Chris, one of his things. Oh, and Tanner. Okay, cool. Oh, is this is the one? Okay. I thought this one was so I met Tanner at in Vegas at the MHI conference. I thought this one was something that we had already looked at. And again, I know I just said I want to stay away from RV, but I do like resort style RV. At least, I don't know. It's it's the shiny object, it's the pull. So, but last I talked to Tanner, this one was off market. So let's search elsewhere. What else we got? Where else you guys want to look? I'm gonna also bring up my email because I know there was a wholesale deal. Let's see who had that. It was up in Michigan. That's why you guys might have seen I posted about Michigan and how it is for landlord friendly. Let me see. Okay, there we go. Evergreen Partners. I think that's Andrew Keel's company, but also I could be totally wrong. But here, I'll share this. Okay. Anyone see this one? Norton Shores, Michigan. I did have to look up and see if MI was Michigan or not. Anyway, I like this. But you know, so the thing I think about is companies like Evergreen, like why aren't they buying it? You know, so a lot of the wholesale companies are like buyers, and you know, so it's like they'll buy the best things and then they'll wholesale what doesn't work for them, what doesn't fit in their buy box, and you know, most of the times it's the price is too high, but you know, I think I sent this to Matthias. Yeah, see. Haha. So yeah, let's see. Geez, who is this? Who can I call about this? No. What's your deal summary? Let's see. Okay, let's see.
In this video, we're going to be discussing our latest off-market mobile home park deal. This is a two-park portfolio deal in Norton Shores, Michigan. As you can see, this is a total of 122 lots. 72 have homes, 50 are occupied. Occupancy is a bit lower on this one, but that can definitely be improved. And I'll explain how that goes a bit further on in the video. With regard to the total purchase price of these two, together it's going for $2,050,000. Said it's a combined portfolio deal with 30 days of due diligence, a 60-day close. And you can contact us the following information. Nick Marsh would be the best person to speak with, 386-564-3867. Or you can just shoot us an email when you see the email that we send out. This is going to be a basic layout of the
Gosh,
email.
it was too fast. That was too fast.
Or you can just shoot us an email when you see the email that
Damn
we
it.
send out. This is going to Nick Marsh would be the best person to
Nick
speak with,
Marsh.
386-564-3867. Or you can just shoot us an email when you see the email that we send out. This is going to be a basic layout of the email with all the links and information that you're going to need as well. With regard to the properties themselves, let's take an overview look at them. Crestview Estates and Moon Lake Mobile Home Park. They're very close together. We can even zoom in and take a better look on street view as well at the properties. This one is very good looking, as we can see. You know, paved roads, good looking homes. This is one of the single family homes that's on the property. That is as well. You can see we can walk directly through the park, but what we did is have one of our photographers go to the property and walk around, take pictures of each home, and we're taking pictures of. There's that home that I mentioned as well. Similar situation with the second property as well. We walked around, got some pictures taken, and what needs to be taken a look at is in the property photos as well. Let's discuss the properties themselves. With regard to the market rates and where they're at, you know, with economic occupancy as well. The physical occupancy is lower. Lot occupancy is the hair on the deal. That is where the main value add is located. With regard to the lot rent for the area, we did rent comparisons and it came back at $485. We have a tab on the pro forma on the underwriting, where you can go and take a look at that information with some graphs as well. Came out of $485. with the average of the parks that we're selling coming out to 365 and 346, 356 as an average, and that can obviously be raised to market, which is great. Once again, this is the contact information to get in contact with us before we head into the rest of the information here. Let's take a look. When we're looking at the financials of each property, you could take a look at them individually as well, but since it is a package deal, we've gone ahead and combined that. The financials currently, this is what they look like. Here is the gross income as well as the expenses. We've created a normalized tab where we would run the property a certain way. Obviously, currently, because of the occupancy, the cap is fantastic and year one, but once we look at the financial projections, that is the hair on the deal. As we mentioned, it is just a bit lower in occupancy. But when we look at the projections of the property, assuming occupancy goes up, and that's what we're tracking right here, we can account for turnover with the 2 vacant homes. That's what we do. But assuming the occupancy goes up, all the homes are converted to tenant-owned homes, increasing the lot rent to get to market and above, increasing in 3% increments. That's what we calculated. That's your expenses increasing in 3% increments. If we take a look at the rent comparisons as well, we make provisions for that, calculated to current and future rent costs and what they would be in market rate. So we assume the increase in expenses as well, 3% in each year, 50% of the taxes increase in year two. That's what we calculated as, because that's what we've experienced in the past. But increasing with the occupancy in year two, it reaches an 11.2 cap, along with the increase in rent. And you can fiddle with this and figure it out yourself as well. But in year five, it does get to a 17.6 cap, and that's what we calculated with the NOI just over 564,000. With regard to the cash and cash return as well, 3% year one, like we mentioned, the occupancy is low, 10%, 17, 20, 21% is what we're aiming at there. And there are visual representations of these.
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah.
Just ran through now.
Okay.
122 lots, city water and sewer, as well as the hair on the deal, increasing the due diligence folder will lead to this link here, which includes the property information for both properties, along with the underwriting document we're going to be adding here as well, in case you missed that link. If you take a look at the pictures and videos, that's going to head to this link, head into this folder, and you can find that on the overview of each individual properties.
What do you guys think? Okay, so
I don't know, Tim.
go on. Were you gonna say something?
No, you asked what do I think, and I don't know. Being honest.
So when when I read the email originally, I was like, yeah, that sounds good. And then, I was talking to my partner and friend Ryan yesterday with discussing it, and he's like, oh yeah, like this, because he's been doing it longer than me. So let me see if I can find our thoughts on that. What is this? Oh, look, it should be here. Okay, so I'll ask, so in Michigan, you needed concrete pads to install, which doubles the price of infill. We pave the roads, not a ton of demand in the city. A lot. So this is the biggest one. Lots are too small, possibly, like looking at it from Google Maps and whatnot, like Street View and from the aerial view, it looks like, it'd be too small. So that'd be the thing I'd be asking is, what are your thoughts on this? Just kind of gauge. So yeah, let's see.
Hey, this is Nick speaking.
Hey, Nick, it's Tim Woodbridge. How's it going?
Oh, yeah, lost you there. Sorry, who was it?
Hey, it's Tim Woodbridge. How are you, man?
Oh, hey, I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm good, dude. I'm good. Just
Good. What's going on?
calling you about this Michigan deal you got going on that y'all sent out.
Yeah.
Just had a couple questions on it, dude. Um, so looking at the Google Google Maps view and whatnot, looks like the lots are pretty small. Are like how what kind of homes do you think you can bring into that park, to these parks?
Yeah, so the first park, I know that there's probably, I believe we had, I don't know if you know Zach Parker, but he had got out there for us. But there were about 8 of them, 8 out of the, I forget how many lots are at the first Norton Shores Park. It would be, I think it was somewhere around 50 or 60, but 8 of those would be too small to bring a normal size home in. And then the rest of the lot should be good. And then the other park, Mono Lake, that one, we haven't had anybody get out there. It did look like it was a little bit tighter. I'm not sure. So honestly, I'm not too sure on that one if it can have full size homes or if the majority have to be some type of, 40, 50, 60 foot type homes to, infill.
Yeah. What's so like 1, 2 beds basically? Um,
Yeah, I think, on some of, there's definitely lots in the one park that has the 3-unit apartment building. That one, there are plenty of lots that can fit full-size homes. There's just a few that are, he said 8 that he had measured that were, would not be able to fit a full-size home, or, probably something more like 40 or 50 foot would be, more reasonable there.
all right, dude. What are you guys seeing for homes that are 40, 50 foot? How much are you buying them for?
Honestly, I'm not on that side as much. That'd probably be an Andrew question more so.
Mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
I know he's out there searching, and I mean, it kind of just depends market by market. Like, we've been able to get some in the 20 to 30K range, good bit, and then sometimes we'll get really lucky and get them for 10 or 15K. But yeah, I mean, I'd say most of the time we'll budget, 20 to 25 grand to infill homes, and then the smaller homes are just a little tougher to find at times.
And so you guys are buying only used ones.
Well, so we will in certain markets, and Norton Shores is a decent market where, I think lot rent should be 450 plus pretty easily there. Really good demographics, low poverty rate, like all the demographics we look for. I was really trying to push Andrew to, why are we not buying that? But we just got several other ones in a pretty large project we're doing. So he kind of wanted to just wholesale one since we haven't done a wholesale in a little while. But yeah, I mean, in that market like that, it may make sense to get newer homes just because you can probably, sell them on payments and find tenants that can afford them.
Mm-hmm,
Where,
mm-hmm.
in some markets we own, it's like, market lot rent's like 300, 350, and it would never make sense to bring a new home in there because people just, their monthly payment would be crazy high if you sold it on payments to them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that, bro. So yeah, like another question I had, with the current occupancy being like 40%, 70%, and your lot rent being so low, like what's y'all's confidence in being able to get up that occupancy? I guess a better question is, how come they're so low right now?
Yeah. So the sellers actually both have really good reasons for it. One of them, so it's 2 different owners. I'm not sure if I kind of put that, a lot of detail on that in the ad. Probably should have put more. But basically, one guy is this guy, Greg, we've been talking to for a few years. He's got a ton of stuff going on and, kind of runs a business. So he's had this third party managed by a group that is running it at like 80%, 90% expenses, just like horribly managed. And he's like, dude, if I was running this thing well, I wouldn't really want to sell, but it's just like such a pain overseeing these guys and like trying to get the property managers to like run this thing decently.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think they're making any effort at all to, well, I know for sure they're not making any effort at all to bring homes in or to, get it to a place that a savvy operator would.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second guy, he's, a really cool guy, kind of got lucky and, it was just cold calling, spoke with him and realized it was in Norton Shores. And I was like, oh shoot, we already have one under contract in Norton Shores. Let me see if I can get them both and package them together.
Mm.
And this guy, he's got like a booming roofing business. I mean, like they are doing, I think it's like 14 to 16 states or something like that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
and just doing a whole ton of business. So he bought this park, a few years ago, saying, "Hey, I'm gonna get in here. I'm gonna turn this thing around and get it all fixed up and bring some homes in." And he just hasn't gotten to it. And so when we were kind of negotiating, I was like, "Man, do you want to sell this thing?" He's like, I'm indifferent. I think eventually I'll try to get around to it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'd be cool with selling it. And so, he kind of set a price, and I was like, that's a really reasonable price. So we got him for a pretty good rate, and trying to package it with that other one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's smart, dude. I like it. Like what y'all are doing. So I'm looking at high level right now. 72 lots have homes, 50 of them with tenants. Are the 22 vacant homes, are they park owned?
I'd have to pull it up in front. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I can, whatever it has in that ad is accurate. I believe anything that is vacant is either abandoned or a park-owned home.
Mm-hmm.
But I can verify all that for you.
Okay.
I think there may be, does it say 50 tenants in there?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was thinking it may be a little bit more, but maybe it's just a few vacant homes. But yeah, that sounds about right. I think, there's some park-owned homes or just, tenant-owned homes that they haven't really messed with. That I can double check if they have titles for them.
Yeah. That would definitely be something we'd be checking into. Yeah. Okay, how about so in Michigan you got to put concrete pads under the homes, is that correct?
I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I don't know. Is that a thing in Michigan?
That's what I've heard, dude. That's what I've heard. I don't know firsthand, but but that's something I'd of course find out. I guess if that is true, then we just have to see, if they have concrete pads there already, or if we would have to do that with infill, because that makes a big difference in terms of infill cost. But
yeah, from what I was told, and take it with a grain of salt from sellers, but they had said that most of those lots are like ready to go, like they don't require a whole ton to I guess get them ready for infill. I mean, I'd still budget some just to be safe, but
yeah,
that's kind of what they had said is it's not like there needs to be electricity or water or sewer brought to them. There may be just some basic stuff to get the lot ready, but that seemed like most were pretty ready to roll.
Okay, and it looks like it's all master metered, like for city water.
So I believe both parks are master meter, and I don't think they bill back yet for water or sewer.
Gotcha.
So I think we budgeted in there to do Metron meters.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, bro. Cool.
Nice and easy.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I got in my other parks, and where it's not direct bill from the city, that's the smart way to do it.
Absolutely.
All right, dude. Well, let me put some numbers together and then send you guys out an LOI, and we can talk more.
Yeah, sounds great, Tim. Well, let me know if you have any other questions or anything. Give me a shout, and I'll keep my eye out for that LOI. All
right, Nick. Sounds good, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Thanks for the call, Tim. See ya.
Bye. Maybe.
Cool.
I don't know. I don't know. So then I go back to sending to my master underwriter and I say, just called the broker or whatever, doesn't matter. So in the, what was the first park? What was the name of that? Not the Mona Lake, the, Crestview Estates. Okay. Mm. Eight of the lots aren't usable. And I know he said that they're like smaller homes, but if we just count on them not being usable, and if they are usable, sweet. Then like if we can get the numbers to work without needing to use those, that's like the best bet. It's kind of like like I was saying earlier with the smaller MSAs, like granted, now we've decided not even to work with the small MSAs, but if we were to do it, like just count on not being able to bring in new homes. So the vacants in Mona Lake are smaller and can only accommodate 40 50 foot long homes. Also, without adding homes to this, and I type so bad to this park. But yeah, it's calling, getting information, like getting to the heart of what's going on with the property and seeing, if it's workable or not.
Tim, how many brokers do you work with, roughly?
I mean, I talk to a lot. But like, so like they're all the selling broker, right? I don't ever have a
Yeah.
buying broker. But I mean, I haven't talked to them. So here, look, I'll show you. Nick Marsh is with Evergreen. So while we were watching that video, I looked in my phone for Evergreen people. And I talked with, oh, where's that camera now? There. So 3. So I got Brent, Mike, and Nick. So I've definitely talked to these guys before. I think I want to say I've talked to Brent more than anyone else. But Marcus and Millichap brokers, like I've had repeat business with Dylan from Marcus and Millichap. But like, whoever's listing a deal, I'll call them up and I will more than likely talk to them again because I see the same names over and over and over and over again, who are listing mobile home parks. And so, I know that I will likely be connecting again. So
Yeah, I was just curious. Thanks.
but yeah, I've got another call at 1 or so. Does anyone have any questions about anything?
Not today.
Really, it's not magic. It's just calling people and talking to people like you're an interested buyer, which you are. So, all right, guys. Well, that's all I got for today. We'll see about this deal, see what Matthias comes up with. And yeah, I'll keep you guys apprised of the situation. Let me know if I can help you with anything.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thanks,
guys.
Tim.
Awesome, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.